Fireside Tailes for Wolfgang. Episode 34. Originally broadcast on GWC Productions' YouTube channel, Caps Media Television Channel 6 in Ventura, on KPPQ LP Ventura at 104.1 FM, and on the KPPQ Podcast Network. Episodes can also be viewed on Pasadena Media. Greetings and salutations. I'm Hunter Ackerman, here to read some classic literature for you. Thank you all for tuning back in for the conclusion of Anna's Whim. Just then, the gentleman in question came up, saying to Anna in his abrupt way, "Everyone is going to ride, so I cannot get the best horses, but I've secured 2, and now I want a companion. Will you come along for a good old-time gallop?" Anna thought of her blistered hands and hesitated until one look at Clara's hopeful face made her decide to willingly accept. She rode for several hours, in spite of heat, dust, and a hard-mouthed horse who nearly pulled her arms out of the sockets. She kept up gallantly till the ride was over. Then she retired to her room, quite exhausted, but protesting with heroic smiles that she had quite a delightful time. She did not appear at tea, but later in the evening, when an informal dance was well underway, she sailed in on the arm of a distinguished old gentleman. "She means mischief tonight. Who's to be the victim, I wonder?" said one man, putting up his glass for a survey of the gentleman who had accompanied her on the boat. "Well, he might be her brother, or could be her husband, judging by the cavalier way in which he treats her. I could have punched his head this morning when he let her pull up that boat alone," cried a youthful adorer, glaring irefully at the delinquent lounging in a distant doorway. A smug bastard. "I'll lay wagers to an enormous amount that all this splendor is for the Lord and Master who rode with her this morning, and not for our destruction," answered Barlow, who was wise in the ways of women, and also a bit wary as a moth who had burnt his wings more than once at the same candle. "If she said he's an old friend, you may be sure that he's an accepted lover." Clara happened to overhear these pleasing remarks, and 5 minutes after they were uttered, she breathed them tenderly into Anna's ear. A scornful smile was all the answer Clara received, but the beauty was both pleased and annoyed, and waited with redoubled interest in the approach of the old friend, who was regarded in the light of a successful lover. But he seemed in no haste to claim his privileges. Dance after dance went by, while Frank sat talking with the old general or absently watching the dancers that spun about before him. "I cannot stand this another moment," said Anna at last, and she beckoned the recreant knight to approach with a commanding gesture. "Why don't you dance, sir?" "I've forgotten how, ma'am." "After all the pains I took with you when we had lessons together all them years ago?" "I've been too busy to attend to trifles of that sort." "Elegant accomplishments are not trifles, and no one should neglect them who cares to make himself agreeable." "Well, I don't know that I do care, as a general sort of thing." "You ought to care, and as a penance for that rude speech, you must dance this dance with me right now. I cannot let you forget all about your accomplishments for the sake of business, so I shall do my duty as a friend and take you in hand," said Anna, severely. "You are very kind, but is it worth the trouble?" "Now, Frank, don't be provoking and ungrateful, so just rub up your manners a bit and be as well-bred as you are sensible." "Thank you. I'll try. May I have the honor, Miss West?" And he bowed low before her with a smile on his lips that both pleased and puzzled Anna. They danced the dance, and Frank acquitted himself respectably. But the first thing he said with a sigh of relief was, "Come out and talk, for upon my life, I can't stand this oven any longer." Anna followed and, seating herself in a breezy corner, waited to be entertained. But Frank seemed to have forgotten that pleasing duty. Perching himself on the wide baluster of the piazza, he not only proceeded to light a cigarette without even saying, "By your leave," but he coolly offered her one also. "How dare you?" she said, much offended at this proceeding. "I am not one of the fast girls who do such things, and I dislike it exceedingly." "You used to smoke sweet fern and corncob pipes, you remember? These are not much stronger," he said, placidly restoring the rejected offering to his pocket. "I did many foolish things then, which I desire to forget now. And some very sweet and sensible ones also. Ah, well. It can't be helped, I suppose." Anna sat silent a moment, wondering what he meant. And when she looked up, she found him pensively staring at her through a fragrant cloud of smoke. "What is it?" she asked, for his eyes seemed to be seeking something. "I was trying to see some trace of the little Anna I used to know. I thought I'd found her again this morning in the girl in the round hat, but I don't find her anywhere tonight." "Indeed, Frank, I'm not so much changed as I seem." As she spoke, she turned her face toward the light and half extended her hand, as if to claim and hold the old regard that seemed about to be withdrawn from her. Frank bent a little and scanned the upturned face with a keen glance. Her eyes met his with a look both proud and wistful, candid and sweet. Frank gave a little nod as if satisfied and said with that perplexing smile of his, "Most people would only see the beautiful Miss West in a remarkably pretty gown. But I think I catch a glimpse of little Anna, and I'm very glad of it. You want a friend? Very good. I'll do my best for you, but you must take me as I am, thorns and all." "I will, and not mind if they wound sometimes. I've had roses till I'm tired of them, in spite of their sweetness." As he rose, Frank had taken the hand she offered and, having gravely shaken it, held her hand for another instant, glancing from the little blisters on the delicate palm to the rings that shone on several fingers. "Are you reading my fortune?" asked Anna, wondering if he was going to be sentimental and kiss it. "After a fashion. For I'm looking to see if there's a suspicious diamond anywhere about. Isn't it time there was one?" "That's not a question for you to ask." And Anna caught away her hand as if one of the thorns he had spoke of had suddenly pricked her. "Well, why not? We always used to tell each other everything. And if we were to go on in the old friendly way. We must be confidential. We must be comfortable. The way we used to be.
Well, you can begin yourself then, and I'll see how I like it,
said Anna, aroused and interested in spite of her maidenly scruples about the new arrangement. I will, with all my heart. To own the truth, I've been longing to tell you something, but I wasn't sure that you'd take any interest in it, began Frank, eating rose leaves with interesting embarrassment.
I can just imagine what it is, said Anna quickly, while her heart began to flutter curiously, for these confidences were becoming exciting. You have found your fate and are dying to let everybody know how happy you are.
I think I have. But I'm not happy yet. I'm desperately anxious, for I cannot decide whether it is a wise or possibly a foolish choice.
Who is it?
Never mind the name. I haven't spoken yet, and perhaps never shall, so I may as well keep that to myself for the present at least.
Well, tell me what you like then, and I will ask no more questions,
said Anna, coldly and slightly annoyed. Well, you see, this dear girl is pretty, rich, accomplished, and she's admired. A little spoiled, in fact, but very captivating in spite of it. Now, the doubt in my mind is whether it is wise to woo a wife of this sort, for I know I shall want a companion in all things, and not just a pretty sweetheart or a graceful mistress for my house. Something to decorate the furniture by the fireplace.
I should say it was not wise, began Anna decidedly, then hastened to add more quietly, but perhaps you only see one side of this girl's character. She may have much strength and sweetness waiting to be called out when the right mate comes.
I often think so myself. And I long to learn if I am the man. But sometimes there comes a frivolous act, thoughtless word, or just a fashionable folly on her part, and this dampens my ardor. It makes me feel as if I better go elsewhere before it's too late.
You're not madly in love, then?
Well, not yet. But I should be, if I saw much of her, for when I do, I rather lose my head, and I'm tempted to fall upon my knees, regardless of time, place, and consequences. Frank spoke with such sudden love and longing in his voice, and stretched out his arms so suggestively that Anna started, but he contented himself with gathering a rose from the clusters that hung all about, and Anna slapped an imaginary mosquito as energetically as if it had been the unknown lady for whom she felt a sudden and inexplicable intense dislike. So, you think I'd better not say to be my love, be mine? Frank asked as he sat with his nose luxuriously buried in the fragrant heart of the rose.
Decidedly not. I'm sure, for the way you speak of her, that she's not worthy of you, and your passion cannot be very deep, said Anna, a little more cheerfully.
It grows rapidly, I find, and I give you my word, if I should pass a week in the society of that lovely butterfly, it would be all over with me by Saturday night.
Then don't do it.
But I want to. Desperately. Do say that I may. Just Just for a last nibble at temptation before I take your advice and go back to my bachelor life again, he said beseechingly.
Don't go back. Don't go back. Love somebody else and be happy. I'm sure that you are going to be a man of mark, and you must have a good wife, not a silly little creature who will be a helpless decoration all your life. So do take my advice and let me help you if I can.
Anna spoke earnestly, and her face quite shone with friendly zeal. She expected a serious reply, but great was her surprise to see Frank lean back against the vine-wreathed pillar behind him and laugh till a shower of rose leaves came fluttering down on both of their heads.
I don't see any cause for such unseemly merriment,
was her dignified reproof of this new impropriety. I beg your pardon. I really couldn't help it. For the comical contrast between your sage counsels and your bloomin' face, your manner was quite maternal and most impressive till I looked at you in your French finery, and then it was just all up with me, said Frank penitently, though his eyes still danced with a little bit of mirth. The compliment appeased Anna's anger, and she looked up at him with a laugh as blithe as his own.
I dare say I was absurdly sober. If you don't care for my advice, I'll take it all back, and you can go and marry your butterfly as soon as you like.
I rather think I shall, said Frank slowly. For I fancy she has got a hidden self, as you suggested, and I'd rather like to find it out. Now, you, for instance, you don't show half your good points, and a casual observer would consider you merely a fashionable woman. Lovely, but shallow.
As you did the last time we met,
put in Anna sharply. If she expected him to deny it, she was mistaken, for he answered with provoking candor, Exactly, and I quite grieved about it. For I used to be very fond of my little playmate, and thought she'd make a fine woman. I'm glad I've seen you again, for I find I was unjust in my first judgment, and this discovery gives me hope that I may be mistaken in the same way about my... well, we'll call her my sweetheart.
I knew you were disappointed in me, thanks to my foolish education and the life I have led these last few years. Everybody just flatters me, and
I don't, said Frank promptly.
That's true.
And Anna could not help but laughing in the middle of her confessions at the tone of virtuous satisfaction with which he repelled the accusation.
No, she continued, you are honest enough for anyone, and I like it, though it startles me now and then. It is so new.
I hope I'm not disrespectful, said Frank, busily removing the thorns from the stem of his flower.
Oh, no, not that exactly. You treat me very much as if I was a sister or a masculine friend.
And you don't like it? Asked Frank, lifting the rose to hide the mischievous smile that lurked about his mouth.
Yes, I do. You talk to me as if I could understand a man's mind and actually had one of my own.
He handed her the flower without a word, as if the emblem of silence was the best gauge he could offer. Many flowers had been presented to the beauty, but none were kept so long and carefully as the thornless rose her old friend gave her, with a cordial smile that warmed her heart.
A great deal can happen in a week, and the 7 days that followed that moonlight tete-a-tete seemed to Anna the fullest and happiest she had ever known. There were afternoon concerts in breezy drawing rooms when others were enjoying siestas, and Anna sang to her one listener as she had never sung before. But best of all were the moonlight meetings among the roses. For there they interchanged interesting confidences and hovered about those dangerous but delightful topics that need the magic of a midsummer night to make the charm quite perfect. Frank kept his observations, discoveries, and satisfaction to himself with no sign of a special interest except now and then a rapturous allusion to his sweetheart, as if absence was increasing his passion. Anna tried to quench his ardor, feeling sure, she said, that it was a mistake to lavish so much love upon a person who was so entirely unworthy of it. But Frank seemed blind on this one point, and Anna suffered many a pang. But as the week drew to an end, a secret trouble was in her eyes. "I must be off tomorrow," said Frank, on the Saturday evening as they strolled together on the beach while the sun set gloriously and the great waves broke musically on the sands. "Such a short holiday, after all those months of work," answered Anna, looking away, lest he should see how wistful her telltale eyes were. "I may take a longer holiday. The happiest a man can have if someone will go with me. Anna, I've made up my mind to try my fate," he added impetuously. "I've warned you. I can do no more." Which was quite true, for the poor girl's heart sunk at his words, and for a moment all the golden sky was a blur before her eyes. "I won't be warned, thank you, for I'm quite sure now that I love her. Nothing like absence to settle that point. I've tried it, and I can't get on without her. So I'm going to put my fortune to the touch and win or lose it all." "If you truly love her, I hope you will win and find she is the wife you deserve. But think well before you put your happiness into any woman's hands," said Anna, bravely trying to forget herself. "Bless you. I've hardly thought of anything else this week. I've enjoyed myself, though, and am very grateful to you for making my visit so pleasant," Frank added warmly. "Have I? I'm so glad," said Anna, as simply as a pleased child, for real love had banished all her small coquetries, vanities, and affectations. "Indeed you have. We lonely fellas who have neither mother, sister, nor wife, we need some gentle soul to keep us from getting selfish, hard, and worldly. And few are so fortunate as I in having a friend like little Anna." "Oh, Frank, what have I done for you?" cried Anna, glowing beautifully with surprise and pleasure at this unexpected revelation. "I'll tell you what you did, dear. A man's moral sense gets blunted knocking about this rough and tumble world where the favorite maximum is every man for himself and the devil take the hindmost. Your simple faith in the good and the beautiful was waking up the high and happy beliefs that lay sleeping in my soul. All this you did for me, Anna, and even more. In showing me the hidden side of your nature, I found it so sweet and deep that it restores my faith in womankind and shows me all the lovely possibilities that may lie folded under the exterior of a fashionable woman. Anna's heart was so full she could not speak for a moment.
You're too kind, Frank. I can hardly believe that I have so many virtues, but if I have, like yours, they have been asleep.
She felt a strong desire to lay her head on his shoulder and just sob something like,
"Don't go and leave me. No one loves you half as well as I, or needs you half so much."
Of course, she did nothing of that sort. But as she began to sing, she covertly whisked away a rebellious tear. Frank soon interrupted her music with, "Anna, I've got something awful to tell you."
"What is it?"
she asked, with the resignation of one who has already heard the worst. "It is so bad that I can't look you in the face while I tell it. Listen calmly till I'm done."
"Go on."
And Anna prepared herself to receive some tremendous shock with a masculine firmness. Frank pulled his hat over his eyes and, looking away from her, said rapidly with an odd sound in his voice, "The night I came, I was put in a room opening on the back piazza. And lying there to cool myself and rest after my journey, I heard two ladies talking. I knocked my boots around to let them know I was near. I ran into things and knocked over the coat rack just so I would be heard as being near. But they took no notice, so I listened. Most women's gabble would have sent me to sleep in 5 minutes. But this was rather original and interested me, especially when I found out that I knew one of the parties. I've been trying your experiment all the week. Anna, how do you like it?" She did not answer for a moment, being absorbed in swift retrospection. Then she colored to her hat brim, looked angry, hurt, amused, gratified, ashamed, all in 1 minute, and said slowly as she met his laughing eyes,
"Better than I thought I should."
"That's good. Then you forgive me for my eavesdropping and my rudeness? It was abominable, but I could not resist the temptation of testing your sincerity. It was great fun, but I'm not sure that I shall not get the worst of it after all," said Frank, sobering suddenly.
"You played so many jokes upon me in old times that I didn't find it hard to forgive this one, though I think it rather base of you to deceive me so. Still, as I've enjoyed and got a good deal out of it, I don't complain, and I won't send you overboard just quite yet," said Anna generously. "You always were a forgiving angel," said Frank tenderly. "It was this, then, that made you so brusque to only see me? That made you so brusque to just me? So odd and so careless? I couldn't understand it, and it hurt me at first, but I thought it was because we had been children together, and soon I forgot it. You were so kind and so confidential. You were so helpful and straightforward. It was
great fun, for I always knew you meant what you said, and that was an unspeakable comfort to me in this world of flattery and falsehood. Yeah, you may laugh at me, Frank, and leave me to myself again. I can bear it, for I've proved that my whim was a possibility. I see my way now and can go on alone to a truer and happier life than that in which you found me.
She spoke out bravely and looked above the level sands and beyond the restless sea as if she had found something worth living for and did not fear the future. Frank watched her an instant, for her face had never worn so noble an expression before. Sorrow as well as strength had come into the lovely features, and pain as well as patience touched them with new beauty. His own face changed as he looked, as if he let loose some deep and tender sentiment long held in check, now ready to rise and claim its own. "Anna," he said penitently, "I've got one other terrible confession to make, and then my conscience will be clear." "I want to tell you who my sweetheart is. I have her picture. Will you look at it?" She gave a little shiver, turned steadily, and looked where he pointed. But all she saw was her own astonished face reflected in the shallow pool behind them. One glance at Frank made any explanation utterly needless. Indeed, there was no time for her to speak before he enfolded his arms around her and kissed her cheek. A voice sweeter to her than wind or wave whispered tenderly in her ear, "All this week, I've been learning and enjoying far more than you have. I've read a woman's heart and learned to trust and honor what I've loved ever since I was a boy. Absence proved this to me, so I came to look for little Anna and found her better and dearer than ever. May I ask her, you, to keep on teaching me? Will you share my work as well as my holiday and be the truest friend a man can have?" And Anna straightaway answered, "Yes." The short story by O. Henry is called Mammon and the Archer. So what you need to know going in is that Mammon, M-A-M-M-O-N, Mammon is the god of material wealth and greed. The Archer, this is a simple one, that's just Cupid. You know, the little fat angel character that like shoots people with arrows of love. That's the Archer. So, with no further ado, he says as he futzes around to get the thing to work. Without further ado, this is Mammon and the Archer by O. Henry. Old Anthony Rockwall, retired manufacturer and proprietor of Rockwall's Eureka Soap, looked out the library window of his Fifth Avenue mansion and grinned. His neighbor to the right, The aristocratic clubman G. Van Schweilit Suffolk Jones came out of his waiting motorcar, wrinkling a scornful nostril as usual at the Italian Renaissance sculpture of the Soap Palace's front elevation. "Stuck-up old statuette of nothing doing," commented the ex-soap king. "The Eden Muse will get rid of that old frozen nestle rod. Yet, if he don't watch out, I'll have this house painted red, white, and blue next summer and see if that'll make his Dutch nose turn up any higher." Then Anthony Rockwall, who never cared for servant ringing bells, went to the door of his library and shouted, "Mike!" in the same voice that had once chipped off pieces of the sky on the Kansas prairies. "Tell my son," said Anthony to the answering menial, "to come in here before he leaves the house." When young Rockwall entered the library, the old man laid aside his newspaper, looked at him with a kindly grimace on his big, smooth, ruddy countenance, rumpled his mop of white hair with one hand, and rattled the keys in his pocket with the other. "Richard," said Anthony Rockwall, "what do you pay for the soap that you use?" Richard, only 6 months home from college, was startled just a little. He had not taken the measure of this sire of his, who was as full of unexpectedness as a girl at her first party. $6 a dozen, I think, Dad." "In your clothes?" "I suppose about $60, as a rule." "You're a gentleman," said Anthony, decidedly. "I've heard of these young bloods spending $24 a dozen for soap and going over the 100 mark for clothes. You got as much money to waste as any of them, and yet you stick to what's decent and moderate. Now, I use the old Eureka, not only for sentiment, but it's the purest soap ever made. Whenever you pay more than 10 cents a cake for soap, you buy bad perfumes and labels, but for 50 cents is doing pretty well for a young man in your generation, position, and condition. As I said, you're a gentleman. They say it takes 3 generations to make one. They're off. Money'll do it as slick as soap grease. It's made you one. By hokey, it's almost made one of me. I'm nearly as impolite and disagreeable and ill-mannered as these 2 old knickerbocker gents on each side of me that can't get enough sleep at nights 'cause I bought in between 'em. There are some things that money can't accomplish, remarked young Rockwall, with a rather gloomy reflection. Now, don't say that, said old Anthony, shocked. I bet my money on money every time. I've been through the encyclopedia down to Y looking for something you can't buy with it. I expect to take up the appendix next week. I'm in for money against the field. Tell me something money won't buy, I dare you. Well, for one thing, answered Richard, rankling just a little, it won't buy into the exclusive circles of society. Oh, won't it? Thundered the champion of the root of all evil. You tell me where your exclusive circles would be if the first Astor hadn't had the money to pay for his steerage passage over. Richard sighed as though his point had been completely missed. And that's what I'm coming to, said the old man, less boisterously. That's why I asked you to come in. There's something going wrong with you, boy. I've been noticing it for 2 weeks. Out with it. I guess I could lay my hands on 11 millions within 24 hours besides the real estate. If it's your liver, there's the Rambler down in the bay, cold and ready to steam down to the Bahamas in 2 days. Not a bad guess, Dad. You haven't missed it by very far. Ah, said Anthony keenly.
What's her name?
Richard began to walk up and down the library floor. There was enough comradeship and sympathy in this crude old father of his to draw his confidence.
Why don't you just ask her? Said old Anthony. She'll jump at you. You got the money and the looks. You're a decent boy. Your hands are clean. You got no Eureka soap on them. You've been to college, but I bet she'll overlook that.
I haven't had a chance, Dad, said Richard.
Well, just make one, said Anthony. Take her for a walk in the park or a hayride or walk home with her from church. Chance. Shaw.
You don't know of the social mill, Dad. She's part of the stream that turns it. Every hour and minute of her time is arranged for days in advance. I must have that girl, Dad, or this town is a blackjack swamp forevermore. And I can't write it. I can't do that.
Tuh,
said the old man.
You mean to tell me with all the money I've got, you can't get an hour or two of a girl's time for yourself?
I've put it off too late. She's going to sail for Europe at noon, day after tomorrow. And she's leaving for a 2-year stay. I'm seeing her alone tomorrow evening for a few minutes. She's at Larchmont now at her aunt's. And I can't even go there. I'm not allowed to meet her with a cab at the Grand Central Station tomorrow evening at the 8:30 train. We drive down to Broadway to Wallach's at a gallop where her mother and a box party will be waiting for us in the lobby. Do you think she would listen to a declaration from me during that 6 or maybe 8 minutes under those circumstances? No. And what chance would I have in the theater or afterward? None. No, Dad, this is one tangle that your money cannot unravel. We can't buy 1 minute of time with cash. If we could, the rich people would live longer. There's no hope of getting a talk with Miss Lantry before she sails. Zero.
All right, Richard, my boy,
said old Anthony, growing cheerful.
You may run along down to your club now. I'm glad it ain't your liver. But don't forget to burn a few punk incense sticks in the Chinese temple to the great god Mazuma from time to time. You say money won't buy time? Of course, you can't order eternity wrapped up and delivered at your residence for a price, but I've seen Father Time get pretty bad stone bruises on his heels when he walked through the gold diggings.
That night came Aunt Ellen, gentle, sentimental, wrinkled, sighing, oppressed by wealth. She came in to her brother Anthony at his evening paper and began discourse on the subject of lovers' woes.
He told me all about it, said Brother Anthony, yawning. I told him my bank account was at his service, and then he began to knock money. Said money couldn't help. Said the rules of society couldn't be bucked for a yard by a team of 10 millionaires.
Oh, Anthony, sighed Aunt Ellen. I wish you would not think so much of money. Wealth is nothing where true affection is concerned. Love is all powerful. If he only had spoken earlier, she could not have refused our Richard, but now I fear it's too late. He will have no opportunity to address her. All your gold cannot bring happiness to your son. At 8 o'clock the next evening, Aunt Ellen took a quaint old gold ring from a moth-eaten case and gave it to Richard. Wear it tonight, nephew, she begged. Your mother gave it to me.
Good luck in love, she said it brought. She asked me to give it to you when you had found the one that you would love. Young Rockwell took the ring reverently and tried it on his smallest finger. It slipped as far as the second joint and stopped. He took it off and stuffed it into his vest pocket after the manner of man. And then he phoned for his cab. At the station, he captured Miss Lantry out of the gadding mob at 8:32.
We mustn't keep Mama and the others waiting,
said she. To Wallach's Theater, as fast as you can drive, said Richard loyally. They whirled up 42nd to Broadway, and then down to the white-starred lane that leads from the soft meadows of sunset to the rocky hills of morning. At 34th Street, young Richard quickly thrust up the trap and ordered the cabman to stop. I've dropped a ring, he apologized as he climbed out. It was my mother's, and I'd hate to lose it, he apologized. I won't detain you for a minute. I did see where it fell. In less than a minute, he was back in the cab with the ring. But within that minute, a crosstown car had stopped directly in front of the cab. The cabman tried to pass to the left, but a heavy express wagon cut him off. He tried the right, and he had to back away from a furniture van that had no business to be there whatsoever. He tried to back out, but he dropped his reins and swore dutifully he was blockaded in a tangled mess of vehicles and horses. One of those street blockades had occurred that sometimes tie up commerce and movement quite suddenly in the big city. Why don't you just drive on, said Miss Lantry impatiently. We'll be late. Richard stood up in the cab and looked around. He saw a congested flood of wagons, trucks, cabs, vans, and streetcars filling the vast space where Broadway, 6th Avenue, and 34th Street cross one another as a 26-inch maiden fills her 22-inch girdle. And still, from all the cross streets, they were hurrying and rattling toward the converging point at full speed and hurtling themselves into the struggling mass, locking wheels and adding their drivers' imprecations to the clamor. The entire traffic of Manhattan seemed to have jammed itself around them. The oldest New Yorker among the thousands of spectators that lined the sidewalks had not witnessed a street blockade of the proportions of this one. I'm very sorry, said Richard as he resumed his seat, but it looks as if we are stuck. They won't get this jumble loosened up in a single hour, and it was completely my fault. If I hadn't dropped that ring, Let me see, said Miss Lantry. Now that it can't be helped, I don't care. I think theaters are stupid anyway. Much later, at 11 o'clock that night, somebody tapped lightly on Anthony Rockwell's door. Come in, shouted Anthony, who was in a red dressing gown and reading a book of piratical adventures. Piratical adventures. Savvy. That somebody was Aunt Ellen, looking like a gray-haired angel that had been left on Earth by mistake. They're engaged, Anthony, she said softly. She's promised to marry our Richard. On their way to the theater, there was a street blockade, and it was 2 hours before their cab could get out of it. And oh, Brother Anthony, don't you ever boast of the power of money again. A little emblem of true love, a little ring that symbolized unending and unmercenary affection was the cause of our Richard finding his happiness. He dropped it in the street and got out to recover it, and before they could continue, the blockade occurred. He spoke to his love and won her there while the cab was hemmed in. Money is dross and meaningless compared with true love, Anthony.
All right, said old Anthony, taking a swig of his Costco bottle of whiskey. I'm glad that the boy got what he wanted. I told him I wouldn't spare any expense in the matter if...
But, Brother Anthony, what good could your money or Costco whiskey have done?
Sister, said Anthony Rockwall, I've got my pirate in a devil of a scrape. His ship has just been scuttled, and he's too good a judge of the value of money to let that character drown. I wish you would just let me go on with this chapter.
The story should end here. I wish it would, as heartily as you, who have been listening, wish it did. But we must go on to the bottom of the well for substantiated truth. The next day, a person with red hands and a blue polka dot necktie who called himself Kelly called out at Anthony Rockwall's house and was at once received in the library.
Well,
said Anthony, reaching for his checkbook,
it was good billing of soap. Let's see. You had, $5,000 in cash.
Right, but I paid out 300 more of my own, said Kelly. I had to go a little above the estimate. I got the express wagons and the cabs mostly for $5 each, but the trucks and the two-horse teams mostly raised me to $10. The motormen, by contrast, they wanted $10, and some of the loaded teams, now those were the expensive blocks, they asked for $20. The cops struck me the hardest, however, $50. I paid two $50 each, but the rest I managed to talk down 20 and 25. But didn't it work beautiful, Mr. Rockwall? I'm glad William A. Brady wasn't onto the little outdoor vehicle mob scene. I wouldn't want William to break his heart with jealousy, and never had a rehearsal either. Ha! The boys was on time to the fraction of a second. It was 2 hours before a snake could get below Greeley's statue.
Yeah, 1,300. There you are, Kelly, said Anthony, tearing off a check. Your 1,000 and the 300 you were out. Let me ask you something. You don't despise money, do you, Kelly?
Me? Said Kelly. I could lick the man that invented poverty, Anthony called out to Kelly when he was at the door.
You didn't notice, said he, anywhere in the tie-up, kind of fat boy without any clothes on, shooting arrows around with a bow and wings sticking off his shoulders, did you?
Why, no, said Kelly, mystified. I didn't.
Right, I mean, if he was like you say, maybe the cops pinched him before I got there. I thought the little rascal wouldn't be on hand, chuckled Anthony. Goodbye, Kelly.
Right, so not sure if I should just narrate the next section with the Kelly accent as it worked out. However, Scrooge McDuck would have narrated it just the same. Alright, so I don't want to spoon feed, but what I love about this is people who are right for the wrong reasons. Now, by contrast, one of the huge writing appeals for me in Rick and Morty is people who are wrong for the right reasons. Frequently, Morty is absolutely wrong, but operating from the best intentions possible. And now here is a 30-minute plot contorting why he operated from the best moral position, but was absolutely definitively wrong in what he did. This is the exact... Would this be the inverse or the converse? Let me think about that and define that later. Old Anthony had this position that anything can be bought, including love. Of course, what he was actually arguing for is that money can just buy you the opportunity. We can bribe enough people to artificially generate a traffic jam, and now my son can make his move, and I'm just going to sit upon high and poo-poo those who say that money can't buy the love that his son could then earn. Of course, if you're any fan of Los Angeles traffic, you would know that this is such a precarious position that it doesn't require great extents of money. It requires one stray dog and a homeless person running across the 405, and suddenly the entire city is shut down for 3 hours. Not a lot of finances required here. One of these days, I might have to read an entire story as Captain Jack Sparrow. However, that day is not this one. My first job at Disneyland was as a performer in their very first stunt show that they had ever put in at Disneyland, which was a Pirates of the Caribbean stunt show. And they specifically hired me because I was a character actor who could do my own stunts, and that was the crossover of what they were trying to cast. And I doubled Johnny Depp in one major motion picture after that. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Fireside Tales for Wolfgang. To view more of my work, check out my YouTube channel at Hunter's Acoustic Cabin. Directed by Hunter Ackerman. Produced by GWC Productions. The show is dedicated to the memory of my best friend, Wolfgang Beastly. Originally broadcast on GWC Productions' YouTube channel, Caps Media Television Channel 6 in Ventura, on KPPQ LP Ventura at 104.1 FM, and on the KPPQ Podcast Network. Episodes can also be viewed on Pasadena Media, either on Spectrum Charter Channel 32 or on AT&T Uverse Channel 99.